In the village of Munja, everyone knew Essie. She was the best healer in the whole region. If someone got sick, hurt, or even had a bad dream, they came to her. Essie lived in a small hut on the edge of the village, near the forest. She gathered herbs, roots, and flowers from the woods to make her special potions. People trusted her because she had learned the art of healing from her grandmother, who had passed down secrets from their ancestors. One morning, Essie was making tea when she heard hurried footsteps outside her hut. It was her younger sister, Kira, her face pale and full of fear. Essie put down her cup and rushed to meet her. "What's wrong, Kira?" Essie asked, already sensing that something bad had happened. "I don't feel well," Kira whispered, clutching her stomach. "I've been feeling weak for days, but now it's worse. I feel like something is wrong inside me." Essie quickly led her sister into the hut and laid her on a mat. She pressed her hand to Kira's forehead. It was cold and clammy. Essie's heart pounded in her chest. She had seen many illnesses before, but something about this felt different. Something darker. After giving Kira a calming tea, Essie gathered her herbs and worked late into the night to prepare a healing mixture. She knew all the usual remedies, but none of them seemed right for this. She had never seen an illness like this in all her years as a healer. The next morning, Kira's condition had worsened. Her skin had turned pale and her breathing was slow. Essie felt a wave of panic. What if she couldn't heal her own sister? She closed her eyes and remembered her grandmother's words. Some cures require more than herbs. Some require the spirits. Essie had always followed the traditional ways of healing, the ones that were safe and respected by the village. But there were other older methods, forbidden methods, ones that involved speaking to the spirits, asking them to intervene. She thought about the old cave deep in the forest, a place she had been warned never to go. It was where her grandmother had once spoken with the spirits. The elders had forbidden anyone from going there now. It was said that anyone who entered the cave without permission from the spirits would face great danger. But Essie had no choice. Kira was her only sister, and if the spirits were her only hope, she would go. That night, while the village slept, Essie packed her healing herbs and quietly slipped into the forest. The moonlight guided her as she walked through the trees, her heart pounding with fear and determination. She reached the cave at dawn, its entrance dark and cold. She stood at the mouth of the cave, knowing she was about to break a law that had been in place for generations. Inside the cave the air was damp, and the walls were covered in strange markings. As Essie moved deeper into the cave, she heard whispers. They weren't coming from any person. These were the voices of the spirits. They spoke in a language she couldn't understand, but she knew they were watching her. She knelt down and spoke, her voice trembling. "Spirits of the ancestors, I come to ask for help. My sister is sick, and I cannot heal her with my own power. I beg you, please show me what I must do." For a long time there was silence. Essie waited, her hands trembling. Just when she thought she would have to leave, a figure appeared before her. It wasn't fully human, but it wasn't a ghost either. It was something in between, a spirit. It had the shape of an old woman, but its eyes glowed with a pale light. "The cure you seek," the spirit said, its voice soft but powerful, "comes with a price. If you wish to save your sister, you must give up something precious to you." Essie's heart pounded. "What must I give up?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The spirit's eyes gleamed. "Your power as a healer." Essie gasped. Her healing power was all she had ever known. Without it, she wouldn't be able to help anyone, not even herself. But if she didn't agree, Kira would die. She had to make a choice. "I will give it up," Essie said, her voice filled with sorrow but also resolve. "Just save my sister." The spirit nodded slowly. "So be it." The cure is in the earth beneath your feet. Take it and go, but remember, you will never heal again." Essie knelt and dug her hands into the soil, pulling up a root that pulsed with a strange light. This was the cure. She clutched it tightly and ran back to the village as fast as her legs could carry her. When she returned to her hut, Kira was barely breathing. Essie quickly ground the root into a paste and fed it to her sister. She watched, praying that it would work. Slowly, color returned to Kira's cheeks. Her breathing steadied and she opened her eyes. "Essie, what happened?" she whispered weakly. Tears filled Essie's eyes. "You're going to be okay," she said, though her heart felt heavy. She had saved Kira, but at a great cost. She knew she could never be a healer again. Her power was gone. In the days that followed, the villagers praised Essie for saving her sister, but Essie felt empty inside. Her hands, once so skilled at healing, now felt like they belonged to someone else. She tried to heal a child with a fever, but nothing she did worked. Her herbs, once so powerful, now felt useless in her hands. She kept her secret hidden, but inside, she feared the day the village would find out that she was no longer their healer. Weeks passed, and one day, a strange illness began to spread through the village. Children and elders alike were falling sick, and no one knew why. Essie tried her best to help, but the truth was becoming clear. Her power was truly gone. One night, as she sat alone in her hut, she heard the whispers again. The spirits. They were calling to her, beckoning her back to the cave. She knew that whatever was happening to the village, the spirits had something to do with it. With a heavy heart, Essie decided she had no choice but to return to the cave. But this time, she wasn't just going to ask for help. She was going to demand answers. The journey back to the cave was darker this time, the forest filled with strange sounds. When Essie reached the entrance, the air felt thick with power. She stepped inside, her hands clenched into fists, ready to face whatever waited for her. "Spirits," she called, her voice stronger now. "I did as you asked. I gave up my power, but now the village is suffering. Why have you done this?" The spirit appeared once more, its eyes glowing brighter than before. "We did nothing," it said calmly. "This illness is not our doing. It comes from something much older, something that even we cannot control." Essie felt a chill run down her spine. Something older than the spirits? What could that be? She had never heard of anything more powerful than the ancestors. "If you cannot help us, then who can?" Essie asked, her voice trembling. The spirit looked at her with sad eyes. "There is one way, but it is dangerous. You will need to find the source of this sickness. It lies deep within the forbidden forest, in a place where no human has ever returned from." Essie's heart raced. The forbidden forest was a place filled with fearsome creatures and dark magic. No one had ever gone there and lived to tell the tale. But she knew she had no choice. The village was depending on her, and even without her healing power, she had to try. "I will go," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Tell me where to find it." The spirit smiled faintly. "Follow the river," it said. "It will lead you to the heart of the forest, where the sickness was born. But beware, Essie. The forest is alive, and it does not welcome strangers." Essie nodded, her mind racing. She was scared, but she couldn't let that stop her. She would find the source of the illness and end it, no matter what it took. With a deep breath, she turned and left the cave, ready to face the dangers that awaited her in the forbidden forest. Essie left the cave with a heavy heart, her mind buzzing with the words of the spirit. The forbidden forest was a place of nightmares. Villagers told stories of creatures with sharp claws, trees that could move, and shadows that whispered terrible things. But Essie had no choice. The sickness, spreading through Munja, was not slowing down, and she couldn't let her people suffer. As she walked back toward the village, the moon shone brightly above, casting long shadows on the forest floor. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees made the hairs on her arms stand up. She knew that beyond these woods, deeper into the forest, was the place no one dared enter, the forbidden forest. When she reached her hut, Kira was waiting for her, looking worried. "Essie, where have you been?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The village is getting worse. Children are falling ill, and the elders say it's unlike anything they've seen." Essie's heart sank, but she didn't show it. She hugged Kira tightly. "I have to go, Kira," she whispered. "There's something in the forbidden forest, something that is causing all of this. I need to find it and stop it before it destroys our village." Kira's eyes widened in fear. "No, you can't go. It's too dangerous. No one who enters the forbidden forest ever returns." Essie pulled back and looked into her sister's eyes. "I have to do this," she said firmly. "For you, for the village, for everyone. I may not be a healer anymore, but I can still try to save our people." Kira clung to her sister, tears welling up in her eyes. "Promise me you'll come back." "I promise," Essie whispered, though deep down she wasn't sure if she could keep that promise. The next morning, Essie prepared for her journey. She gathered what little supplies she had left, a small pouch of dried herbs, a water flask, and a knife. She wrapped herself in a thick cloak to protect against the cold and tied her braids tightly behind her head. The village was eerily quiet as Essie made her way toward the river. People were too weak to go about their usual routines. Even the children who usually played and laughed in the streets were lying sick in their homes. Essie's heart ached, but she pressed on. As she reached the edge of the village, a voice called out to her. It was Ayo, one of the village warriors. He was tall and strong, with a scar across his cheek from a battle long ago. "Essie," he said, walking up to her. "I heard you're going into the forbidden forest. Are you mad? That place is cursed." Essie shook her head. "I have no choice, Ayo. The sickness is coming from there. If I don't go, everyone will die." Ayo frowned, crossing his arms. "Then I'm coming with you." Essie blinked in surprise. "But you don't believe in spirits. Why would you help me?" Ayo shrugged, though his expression was serious. "You're brave enough to go even without your powers. I can't let you face that place alone." Essie hesitated. She didn't want to put anyone else in danger, but having Ayo by her side might make the journey a little less terrifying. She nodded. "All right, but be careful. This won't be an easy journey." With that, the two of them set off, following the river as it wound deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller and thicker, their branches stretching overhead like a dark, tangled web. The further they walked, the quieter the forest became. Even the birds seemed to avoid this part of the woods. After several hours of walking, Essie felt a change in the air. The atmosphere became colder, and a strange mist began to rise from the ground, curling around their legs. Ayo gripped his spear tightly, his eyes scanning the trees for any signs of danger. "We're getting close," Essie whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. "I can feel it." Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the shadows. Essie froze, her heart pounding. From the mist, a pair of glowing yellow eyes appeared, followed by the outline of a large, dark creature. Its fur was black as night, and its teeth gleamed in the dim light. Ayo stepped forward, raising his spear. "Stay back," he warned, his voice calm but firm. The creature snarled, baring its teeth, and lunged at them. Essie's heart raced as Ayo swung his spear, but the creature was fast. It dodged the blow and swiped at him with its massive paw, knocking Ayo to the ground. "Ayo!" Essie shouted, reaching for her knife. But before she could move, the creature stopped, its glowing eyes locking onto Essie. It let out a low, rumbling growl as if it recognized her. For a moment it hesitated, then slowly backed away, disappearing into the mist. Essie stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. Why hadn't it attacked her? What had just happened? Io groaned, sitting up and rubbing his head. What? What was that thing? I don't know, Essie whispered, still staring at the place where the creature had vanished. But it didn't hurt me. Ao frowned, standing up and dusting off his clothes. Why would it leave you alone? Essie shook her head, unsure of the answer. But deep down, she had a feeling the creature was somehow connected to the spirits. The sickness, the forest, the creatures, it was all tied together. We need to keep going, Essie said, her voice steady but her mind racing with questions. We're not far from the source of the sickness. They continued their journey, the mist growing thicker as they moved deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches twisting into strange shapes. Essie could feel the presence of something watching them, but she couldn't tell where it was coming from. Finally, they reached a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a massive tree, its bark blackened and twisted. At its base, the ground was cracked and dry, and the air smelled of decay. This is it, Essie whispered, the source of the sickness. Ao looked around, his grip tightening on his spear. What do we do now? Essie took a deep breath, stepping forward. She knelt down beside the tree, her fingers brushing against the cracked earth. As she touched the ground, a sharp pain shot through her hand. She pulled back, gasping in shock. Her fingers had turned black, the same color as the tree's bark. The tree, it's cursed, Essie said, her voice shaking. This is what's causing the sickness. Io frowned. But how do we stop it? Essie stared at the tree, her mind racing. The spirits had said the sickness came from something older than them, something even they couldn't control. But what could it be? As she looked closer, she saw something strange. Deep within the twisted roots of the tree, there was a faint light. It pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of something ancient and alive. Without thinking, Essie reached out and touched the light. Suddenly, the world around her shifted. The mist swirled faster. The trees groaned as if they were alive, and the ground beneath her feet trembled. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed through the air. You have found me, healer, the voice said, sending a shiver down Essie's spine. But can you end the curse I have set upon this land? Essie's heart pounded. She had no idea what she was up against, but whatever it was more powerful than anything she had ever encountered. I will try, she whispered, her voice trembling with fear and determination. The light in the tree pulsed once more, brighter this time. The ancient voice chuckled softly. Very well, it said. Let the true test begin. The world around Essie began to shift and blur. The pulsing light from the tree intensified, wrapping around her like a swirling vortex. A strong wind howled through the clearing, bending the branches of the dark trees as if they were alive. Io stumbled back, eyes wide with shock, as he tried to shield himself from the sudden storm. Essie! Io shouted, but his voice seemed to fade into the distance as Essie was pulled deeper into the vortex. The light enveloped her, blinding her to everything around her. For a moment, Essie felt weightless, floating in an endless sea of brightness. Then, just as suddenly, the light vanished, and Essie found herself standing in a new place, somewhere far from the cursed tree. She looked around in confusion. She was no longer in the forest. Instead, she stood in an open field, bathed in a soft, golden glow. The air was warm, and the sky was a brilliant shade of blue, dotted with white clouds. Flowers bloomed all around her, and the sound of birds chirping filled the air. It was peaceful, too peaceful. But something was wrong. Essie knew this wasn't real. The curse, the sickness, the twisted tree, it couldn't just disappear like this. She took a cautious step forward, her heart pounding in her chest. Her hand still tingled where she had touched the cursed tree's light. "Where am I?" Essie whispered, scanning the field for any sign of danger. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the field. It was the same voice she had heard before, ancient and filled with power. "You are in a place between worlds, healer," the voice said. "A realm of illusions, where your true strength will be tested." Essie spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice, but she saw no one. "I don't understand," she called out. "Who are you? What do you want from me?" A figure slowly materialized in front of her, emerging from the golden light. It was a tall, imposing figure, cloaked in shadows. Its face was hidden, but its eyes glowed with a piercing white light. "I am the guardian of the curse," the figure said, its voice reverberating through the air. "Long ago this land was pure, but greed and cruelty tainted it. The sickness you see is a reflection of that corruption." Essie's heart raced as she listened. "But why punish the village?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The people of Munja have done nothing to deserve this." The figure seemed to grow taller, its shadow stretching across the field. "The curse does not discriminate," it said. "It spreads like a fire, consuming all in its path. Only one with true wisdom and courage can end it. You, Essie, have chosen to face this test. But are you prepared to sacrifice everything?" Essie's mind raced. She had already given up her healing powers to save Kira. What more could she sacrifice? And what did this guardian want from her? "I will do whatever it takes," Essie said, her voice steady, despite the fear swirling inside her. "Tell me how to end the curse." The guardian's glowing eyes narrowed, as if weighing her words. Then, with a wave of its hand, the peaceful field around them began to change. The flowers wilted, the sky darkened, and the ground cracked and split open. Essie stepped back as the once beautiful landscape transformed into a desolate wasteland. "This is the truth of the land," the guardian said. "To lift the curse, you must restore balance. But be warned, healer, restoring balance means confronting the darkness within yourself." Essie swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" The guardian's voice was low and ominous. "You will face your greatest fears, your deepest regrets, and the shadow of your own soul. Only if you survive will the curse be broken." Before Essie could respond, the ground beneath her feet began to shift again. Cracks formed in the earth, and dark tendrils of shadow rose up, wrapping around her legs, pulling her down into the darkness. Essie gasped, struggling to free herself, but the shadows were too strong. They dragged her into the abyss, and everything went black. When Essie opened her eyes, she found herself standing in the middle of her village. But it wasn't the village she knew. The huts were burned and broken, the fields barren, and the people were gone. No one was there, except one figure. Kira. Her sister stood in the middle of the empty village, her eyes wide with fear and pain. Her skin was pale, and her body looked frail, as if the sickness had taken everything from her. "Kira!" Essie cried, running toward her. But Kira didn't move. She simply stared at Essie, her eyes full of accusation. "Why did you leave me?" Kira whispered, her voice hoarse and broken. "Why didn't you save me?" Essie froze, her heart shattering. "Kira, I tried. I did everything I could." But Kira shook her head. "You were supposed to be the healer, Essie. You were supposed to protect me, but you left. You left me to die." Tears filled Essie's eyes. "No, Kira, I came back for you. I saved you." "You saved me," Kira interrupted, her voice cold. "But now the village is dying, because of you." Essie's chest tightened with guilt. "I didn't know this would happen. I didn't know the curse. Your power is gone, Kira said, her voice echoing. And now you are powerless to save anyone. Essie felt the weight of her sister's words crushing her. The guilt, the regret. It was overwhelming. She had failed as a healer. She had failed as a sister, and now the village was paying the price. Suddenly, the sky above them darkened, and the shadowy figure of the guardian reappeared, towering over the village. Its eyes blazed with white light, and its voice boomed through the air. "This is the darkness within you, Essie," the guardian said. "The guilt, the fear, the doubt. It is what keeps the curse alive." Essie fell to her knees, her hands shaking. She didn't know how to fight this. How could she defeat something that was inside her? But then, a faint voice whispered in her ear, her grandmother's voice. Some cures require more than herbs. Some require the heart. Essie closed her eyes, remembering her grandmother's wisdom. The power to heal didn't come from magic or herbs alone. It came from within. The strength to face the truth, no matter how painful. With a deep breath, Essie stood up, her heart pounding. She looked at Kira, at the destroyed village and the towering guardian. This was her test, and she wouldn't run from it. "I accept the darkness," Essie said, her voice strong. "I accept the mistakes I've made and the guilt I've carried. But I will not let it control me." The ground trembled as the guardian's eyes flickered. The shadowy figure began to shrink, and the darkness around Essie began to lift. Kira's figure slowly faded, and the village started to rebuild itself, the broken huts mending, the fields growing green once more. The guardian, now smaller, looked at Essie with a gleam of respect in its eyes. "You have passed the test," it said. "The curse will be lifted, and the village will heal. But remember, Essie, the true power to heal lies not in magic, but in the heart." With that, the guardian vanished, and the world around Essie dissolved into light. Once more, when she opened her eyes again, she was back at the base of the cursed tree. The twisted bark was no longer black, but a rich, healthy brown. The air smelled fresh, and the ground beneath her feet was soft and fertile. Ayo, who had been standing a few feet away, rushed to her side. "Essie, are you all right? What happened?" Essie smiled, though her heart was still heavy with the weight of what she had experienced. "The curse is broken," she said softly, "but it's not over yet. We need to return to the village." Ayo nodded, helping her to her feet. Together they made their way back to Munja, where the real healing would begin.